Every empire believes its money is untouchable. Every superpower assumes its financial dominance will last forever. And every time, reality has other plans. In the summer of 1971, the United States discovered just how fragile that dominance could be when foreign nations began demanding something Washington could no longer afford to give: gold. What followed was a crisis so severe it would reshape the global financial system overnight and leave America scrambling to save face while quietly abandoning promises it had made to the world. This is the story of how America almost lost everything. Not to missiles or armies, but to a simple demand that exposed the hollowness of its monetary promises. And if you think this crisis belongs to history books, think again. The decisions made during those desperate months still control every dollar in your wallet today. The year 1971 was supposed to be routine. America was the unquestioned financial superpower, anchor of the global economy through the Bretton Woods system that had governed international finance since World War II. Under this arrangement, the United States had made a sacred promise. Every dollar could be exchanged for gold at $35 per ounce. Other nations pegged their currencies to the dollar, making America the center of world finance. It was a position of extraordinary privilege and crushing responsibility. But by that summer, the privilege was becoming a trap. Deep in the vaults beneath Manhattan, officials at the Federal Reserve were watching America's gold reserves drain away at an alarming pace. Foreign central banks, led by France, had begun systematically converting their dollar holdings into gold. What started as routine transactions had become something much more dangerous: a coordinated assault on America's monetary foundation. The French were not subtle about their intentions. President Charles de Gaulle had spent years denouncing what he called America's exorbitant privilege, the ability to print dollars and have the world accept them as good as gold. France had been building its gold reserves methodically, converting dollars at every opportunity until gold represented 92% of French reserves. They were preparing for war, not with bullets, but with balance sheets. The pressure intensified throughout the spring and summer. Vietnam War expenses were bleeding the treasury dry, while Great Society programs demanded massive domestic spending. Rather than raise taxes or cut expenditures, the government chose the politically easier path: print more dollars. The Federal Reserve expanded the money supply to finance deficits, flooding the world with American currency, while the gold backing remained fixed. Foreign nations weren't blind to this mathematical impossibility. There were far more dollars in circulation than America could ever redeem at $35 per ounce. By August, the situation had become critical. America's gold reserves had fallen to just 10,000 metric tons, less than half their post-war peak. Every day brought new demands for conversion. Every transaction drained the vaults a little more. Treasury officials knew they were facing an impossible equation: unlimited dollar liabilities backed by rapidly shrinking gold assets. Then came the moment that would define the crisis. In early August, France made a move so audacious it would become legendary in monetary history. They dispatched a battleship to New York Harbor with a singular mission: retrieve French gold deposits from the Federal Reserve vaults. This wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a declaration of no confidence in American monetary policy, delivered with the symbolic power of naval force. The sight of a French warship docking in New York to collect gold was more than symbolic. It represented the breakdown of trust that had held the global financial system together for nearly 3 decades. If France was willing to send military vessels to secure their gold, what did that say about their faith in American promises? What message did it send to other nations watching from the sidelines? The French battleship departure with $191 million worth of gold was just the beginning. Word spread quickly through diplomatic and financial channels. If France could demand physical delivery of their gold reserves, why couldn't other nations do the same? The precedent had been set, and the floodgates were about to open. Within days, the unthinkable happened. Britain, America's closest ally and co-architect of the Bretton Woods system, submitted a request that would send shockwaves through Washington. They wanted $3 billion worth of gold transferred from Fort Knox to New York. $3 billion represented roughly one-third of America's entire gold reserves, and Britain wanted it moved immediately. Paul Volcker, then Undersecretary of the Treasury for Monetary Affairs, would later describe receiving that British request as the moment he knew the game was over. If Britain, the nation that had helped design the system alongside America, was demanding physical gold for their dollars, then confidence had completely collapsed. The psychological impact was devastating. This wasn't France making a political statement anymore. This was America's most trusted partner quietly preparing for the worst. The mathematics were brutal and undeniable. Between the French Battleship and the British request, nearly $4 billion in gold would disappear from American vaults in a matter of weeks. At that rate of depletion, the United States would be completely stripped of its gold reserves within months. Treasury officials ran scenario after scenario, each one ending in the same catastrophic conclusion. America could not honour its commitments. Behind closed doors, panic was setting in. Phone calls flew between the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the White House. Emergency meetings convened at all hours as officials grappled with a crisis that threatened to unravel American financial supremacy overnight. The irony was suffocating. The very system that had made America the centre of global finance was now the mechanism through which that dominance could be destroyed. Other nations began sensing weakness. Intelligence reports suggested that Germany, Switzerland, and several smaller European countries were preparing their own gold conversion requests. The trickle was becoming a flood, and Washington had no way to stop it without breaking promises that had anchored international commerce for decades. Every foreign central bank held the power to accelerate America's financial collapse simply by exercising rights they had been guaranteed under Bretton Woods. The political implications were staggering. Losing America's gold reserves wouldn't just be an economic disaster, it would be a humiliation visible to the entire world. The nation that had emerged from World War II as the undisputed financial superpower would be reduced to begging foreign governments not to claim what was rightfully theirs. The psychological damage to American credibility would last generations. President Nixon faced an impossible choice. Honour the gold convertibility promise and watch America's reserves vanish, leaving the nation financially naked and vulnerable. Or break that promise and shatter the foundation of international monetary cooperation, triggering unknown consequences across the global economy. Either path led to crisis, but one preserved some semblance of American control over the outcome. The weekend of August 14th became a marathon of desperate deliberation. Nixon's closest advisers gathered at Camp David, knowing that whatever decision emerged from those meetings would reshape the world economy. Treasury Secretary John Connolly argued for bold action, insisting that America could not allow foreign governments to dictate the terms of its monetary policy. Others warned that breaking the gold link would destroy international trust in American leadership and trigger economic chaos worldwide. Time was running out. European markets would open Monday morning, and there was no guarantee that the weekend would pass without additional conversion demands. Every hour of delay increased the risk that America's gold position would become completely untenable. The pressure was suffocating, the stakes unprecedented, and the margin for error had disappeared entirely. As Saturday night turned to Sunday morning, Nixon made the decision that would end an era. Rather than watch America's gold reserves drain away at the whim of foreign governments, he chose to rewrite the rules of international finance entirely. The gold window would close, convertibility would end, and the world would wake up Monday to discover that the monetary system they had relied upon for decades no longer existed. On August 15, 1971, Nixon stepped before television cameras and announced what would become known as the Nixon shock. The gold window was closed. Convertibility was dead. America would no longer honour its promise to exchange dollars for gold at any price. In one evening, the monetary system that had governed the world since World War II was obliterated by presidential decree. The immediate reaction was chaos, then relief, then the slow realization of what had actually happened. the stock market soared as investors celebrated America's escape from foreign pressure. Politicians praised Nixon's decisive leadership. The public believed their government had saved them from currency speculators and foreign manipulation. But beneath the celebrations, something fundamental had changed forever. America had saved its gold by abandoning the promise that made dollars valuable in the first place. The night America almost lost its gold became the night America lost something far more precious, the anchor that had kept money real. What followed was decades of inflation, currency instability, and the slow erosion of purchasing power that continues today. Gold, which had been fixed at $35 per ounce, now trades for over $2,000. That's not gold becoming more valuable, that's dollars becoming less real. The lesson is timeless and brutal. When governments face the choice between keeping promises and keeping power, promises always lose. The night America almost lost its gold was the night the world lost honest money. And we've been paying the price ever since. If this opened your eyes to how fragile power really is, hit subscribe, because the next gold crisis won't happen in vaults. It'll happen in code.